The massive crystal dome of Nexus Station stretched high above the Galactic Council chambers, its transparent walls showing the endless stars beyond. Inside, representatives from 847 different species sat in perfect silence. Their biopods glowed softly in the dim light, each one designed for a different alien form. Captain Jake Morrison stepped through the entrance doors and immediately felt something was wrong. The chamber was huge, bigger than 3 football stadiums put together, but it was quieter than a library at midnight. Hundreds of creatures filled the space, yet nobody was making a sound. "This is weird," Jake whispered to Dr. Lisa Brown, who walked beside him carrying a tablet full of diplomatic notes. "Maybe it's some kind of ceremony," Lisa whispered back. She was Earth's top expert on alien cultures, but even she had never seen anything like this. They made their way down the long walkway toward the human section. Every alien eye, stalk, sensor, or whatever they used to see was watching them. A creature that looked like a giant butterfly with silver wings fluttered nervously in its pod. Something that resembled a walking tree made of blue crystal started glowing brighter. Even the blob-like aliens in the corner pods seemed to be paying attention. Jake noticed that none of the aliens were talking. Instead, thin beams of light connected their heads to small devices floating above each biopod. The lights pulsed in different colors and patterns. It looked like they were communicating, but without any sound at all. "Are we late?" Jake asked Lisa as they reached their assigned seats. The human biopods were different from the others. They looked like comfortable chairs instead of the complex life support systems the other species needed. Jake sat down and immediately felt out of place. Everyone else was connected to their glowing communication devices, but the humans had nothing. A tall, thin alien with purple skin and 4 arms stood up at the front of the chamber. This was Chancellor Vextor of the Zephyrian Empire, according to Jake's notes. The Chancellor raised all 4 arms, and every alien in the room began the same strange ritual. The light beams connecting them to their devices grew brighter. The air filled with a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Colors danced across the crystal dome above them. It was beautiful, but also very strange. Jake looked around and realized he and Lisa were the only ones not participating. They didn't have the special devices that everyone else was using. They couldn't join in whatever this ceremony was supposed to be. The humming grew louder. Some of the aliens started moving in slow, rhythmic patterns. Others changed colors or shape slightly. The tree-like creatures began to sway back and forth. Even the blob aliens were pulsing in time with some invisible beat. Jake waited for someone to explain what was happening, but nobody said anything. The ritual continued for several minutes. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. "Excuse me," Jake said in a normal-speaking voice. "But why is everyone whispering through machines when we have perfectly good voices?" The effect was immediate and shocking. Every alien in the chamber stopped moving. The humming cut off instantly. The colored lights flickered and went out. Complete silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. 847 alien faces turned to stare at Jake. Some looked scared. Others seemed angry. A few appeared confused, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. Chancellor Vextor's purple skin turned a darker shade. His 4 arms trembled slightly as he pointed at Jake. When he spoke, his voice came through the communication device as a flat, emotionless sound. "The human has violated the sacred silence," the device announced. "No voice may be raised in the council chamber. This is forbidden by the ancient laws." Jake stood up slowly. "I'm sorry, but nobody told us about any sacred silence. We're new here, remember? We just became members 6 months ago." More shocked silence. Several aliens actually backed away from their communication devices, as if Jake's voice might somehow hurt them through the machines. A creature that looked like a giant jellyfish floating in a tank of water began flashing bright red. Its communication device translated this as panic signals. "The chaos speech," it announced. "The humans bring the chaos speech." "Chaos speech?" Lisa asked, standing up beside Jake. "We're just talking normally. This is how humans communicate." The jellyfish alien flashed even brighter red and retreated to the far side of its tank. Other aliens began making worried sounds that their devices translated into phrases like dangerous communication and unfiltered thoughts and mental contamination. Chancellor Vextor raised his arms again, trying to restore calm. The council session is suspended, his device announced. All members will return to their quarters while we decide how to handle this situation. Wait a minute, Jake said. What situation? We were just asking a question. But the aliens were already leaving. They moved quickly but quietly toward the exits, their communication devices dark and silent. Some of them kept looking back at Jake and Lisa with what could only be fear in their strange eyes. Within minutes, the huge chamber was empty except for the two humans. Well, that went well, Lisa said sarcastically. Jake shook his head. I don't understand. We've been talking with these species for months during the membership process. They never seemed afraid of our voices before. Maybe it's different in the formal council setting, Lisa suggested. Some cultures have very strict rules about how and when you can speak in official meetings. But they looked terrified, Jake pointed out, like we had just threatened to attack them or something. They walked back toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the empty chamber. The silence felt heavy and oppressive now. Jake couldn't imagine how anyone could get anything done without being able to talk freely. I think we need to learn more about the sacred silence, Lisa said, and fast. If we can't figure out how to communicate properly, they might kick us out of the council entirely. As they left the chamber, neither of them noticed the small recording devices hidden in the crystal walls. The council security system had captured everything that happened. Soon, every member species would be analyzing the strange behavior of the humans who dared to speak with their natural voices. The question now was whether humanity would be allowed to stay in the council, or if their inability to follow the ancient communication rules would end their membership before it really began. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were very different from every other species they had ever encountered. 3 hours after the disastrous council session, Jake and Lisa sat in their quarters aboard the human diplomatic ship. The room's walls displayed a beautiful view of Nexus Station rotating slowly against the starfield, but neither of them was paying attention to the scenery. A soft chime announced an incoming message. The holographic display activated, showing the face of Ambassador Kethera from the Centaurian Federation. Her skin was pale blue, and her large silver eyes held what looked like concern. Captain Morrison, Dr. Brown, she said through her translation device. The Council has requested that I explain our communication protocols to you. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. That's putting it mildly, Jake replied. We apparently committed some terrible crime just by talking normally. Ambassador Kethera's expression grew more serious. You must understand, Captain, what you call talking normally is something we have not experienced in council chambers for over 3,000 years. Your natural vocal communication is disturbing to many of our member species. Lisa leaned forward. Why? We've been communicating with all of you for months during our membership application process. Nobody seemed bothered then. Those were controlled encounters, Kethera explained. Small groups, prepared conversations, with our best diplomats who were trained to handle your unusual communication style. The full council is different. Most of our representatives have never heard unfiltered vocal communication from any species. Jake frowned. Unfiltered? What do you mean? The ambassador touched a control on her desk, and her communication device projected a complex diagram into the air between them. It showed brain patterns, energy flows, and what looked like filtering systems. All council members use neural dampening devices, she said. They filter our thoughts before we communicate, removing emotional content, personal bias, and unclear ideas. Only pure, logical information is transmitted to other council members. That's horrible, Lisa said without thinking. Kethera actually stepped back from her communication device, as if Lisa's emotional response had somehow reached through it. You see? That reaction you just had, the immediate emotional judgment, that is exactly what we work to prevent. Jake was beginning to understand. So when we speak naturally, you're hearing all of our emotions, our personal opinions, our immediate reactions? Yes, it is chaotic and frightening. During the Great Discord Wars, 3,000 years ago, unfiltered communication between species led to terrible misunderstandings. Entire star systems were destroyed because one species took offense at the emotional content of another species' message. The hologram shifted to show historical images of space battles and destroyed planets. Lisa studied them with growing comprehension. "So you developed these neural filters to prevent future wars," she said. "Everyone has to think carefully and remove all emotion before they communicate." Exactly. The sacred silence is not actually silence. It is purified communication, thoughts that have been cleansed of all potentially dangerous content. Jake stood up and began pacing around the small room. "But doesn't that make communication incredibly slow and limited?" "It makes it safe," Kethera replied firmly. "The Council has maintained peace for 3 millennia using the system." "What about progress?" Lisa asked. "Innovation? Creative problem solving? How do you develop new ideas when you can only share thoughts that have been filtered through machines?" For the first time, the ambassador looked uncertain. "These things, they are less important than maintaining peace between species." Jake stopped pacing and faced the holographic display. "Ambassador, with respect, that's not living. That's just existing. How do you make decisions quickly? How do you handle emergencies? We form committees. We study issues carefully. We prepare formal reports through the neural networks. It takes time, but ensures that all viewpoints are properly considered without emotional contamination." "How much time?" Lisa pressed. "For minor issues, usually several weeks. For major decisions, it can take months or even years." Jake and Lisa exchanged looks of amazement. "Years?" Jake said, "What if there's an emergency? What if something needs an immediate response?" Kethera seemed confused by the question. All problems can wait for proper consideration. Rushed decisions are the source of most conflicts. Lisa pulled up her own data display and showed it to the ambassador. "Look at this. During our membership application process, we solved 17 different problems for various council species. The average time was 4 hours per problem. Your system would have taken months for each one, but your solutions were chaotic, unpredictable. You use emotional reasoning, creative leaps, incomplete data. These methods are dangerous." "But they worked," Jake pointed out. "Every single one of our solutions worked, and they worked fast." The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "The council is meeting now to decide what to do about humanity. Some members want to install neural dampening devices on all humans immediately. Others believe you should be expelled from the council for your inability to communicate properly. And what do you think?" Lisa asked. "I think," Kethera said slowly, "that I am curious about what would happen if we allowed you to continue communicating naturally. For a limited time, of course, and under careful observation." Jake sat back down. "What kind of observation?" "There's going to be a test session tomorrow. A minor dispute between 3 mining colonies. Nothing important enough to risk serious damage if your communication style causes problems. If you can resolve it using your natural methods, the Council might consider allowing humans limited free speech privileges. And if we can't," Lisa asked, "then you will accept neural dampening devices or lose your Council membership." The transmission ended, leaving Jake and Lisa alone with their thoughts. "No pressure," Jake said finally. Lisa nodded grimly. "We have to convince an entire galaxy that the way we naturally communicate, something we do without even thinking about it, isn't dangerous chaos, but actually an advantage. How do we do that? By proving that sometimes chaos is exactly what the universe needs." The next morning brought unexpected news. Jake and Lisa were preparing for their test session when urgent alarms began blaring throughout Nexus Station. Emergency lights flashed red in the corridors, and automated announcements echoed in dozens of alien languages. "This is not a drill," the station's computer announced in Standard Galactic. "All council members report to Emergency Session Chamber 1 immediately." Jake and Lisa hurried to the corridors alongside confused alien delegates. The emergency chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but it buzzed with nervous energy. Species that normally move with careful dignity were scurrying to their positions. Chancellor Vextor's purple skin had turned almost black with stress. "We have received distress calls from 3 separate star systems," he announced through the communication network. "Mining colonies on Kepler, 442b, HD 40307G, and Gliese 667cc are under attack by unknown forces." The main display screen lit up with star charts showing the 3 systems. Each one pulsed red to indicate active combat zones. Initial reports suggest coordinated attacks by unidentified spacecraft. Continued a military representative from the Draconian fleet. The attackers appear to be using advanced technology that our databases cannot identify. Ambassador Cathera looked toward the human section. "Captain Morrison, this is far more serious than the test case we planned. However, the Council has decided to allow you to participate in our emergency response planning." Jake stood up. "What's the normal procedure for something like this?" "Each affected species will form analysis committees," Chancellor Vextor explained. "They will study the attacks through proper neural channels and submit formal reports within 48 to 72 hours. Then we will form a joint strategy committee to coordinate our response." 72 hours? Lisa asked, shocked. "People are being attacked right now." "Hasty decisions in military matters have historically led to the greatest disasters," replied the Draconian representative stiffly. "Proper analysis prevents mistakes that could escalate the conflict." Jake looked at the display screens showing the ongoing attacks. Ships were dying while they spoke. "With respect, sir, by the time you finish your analysis, there might not be anyone left to save." Nervous chittering sounds came from several alien delegates. The idea of making military decisions clearly frightened them. "Captain Morrison," Chancellor Vextor said, "if you believe your communication methods can help, you have permission to demonstrate them now. But if chaos results, humanity will be held responsible." Jake walked to the center of the chamber. "Okay, everyone, I need you to forget about your communication devices for a few minutes. Can you do that?" Most of the aliens looked terrified, but a few curious ones disconnected from their neural networks. "Commander ZYX," Jake called to the Draconian military officer. "What do you know about the attacks?" "The ships appear to be automated," ZYX replied hesitantly, his voice sounding strange without electronic filtering. "They show no signs of biological crew. They attack mining equipment specifically, ignoring defensive installations." "Interesting. Dr. Yelenev, you're from the Botanical Consciousness. Your people have extensive historical databases. Have you seen anything like this before?" The plant-like scientist released a cloud of sweet-smelling spores, apparently her natural way of showing excitement. "Yes, these attack patterns match records from the Void Walker civilization. They disappeared 5,000 years ago, but they used automated mining ships." "Automated miners?" Jake pressed. "Not warships." "Correct. They programmed their machines to collect resources from any available source. The programming may have continued running long after civilization died out." Commander ZYX was nodding now, his tactical mind working without the usual filters. "That explains the target selection. They're not trying to conquer territory. They just want raw materials." Lisa had been studying the star charts. "Look at the pattern of attacks. All 3 systems are rich in rare metals, and they're positioned along an old trade route. The Kepler Trade Corridor," confirmed a delegate from the Centaurian Federation. "It was abandoned centuries ago when we found safer paths." Jake was starting to see the bigger picture. "So we have ancient automated ships following old programming, collecting resources from systems along a forgotten trade route. They probably don't even know they're attacking living beings." "This changes everything," Commander ZYX said, his excitement growing. "If they're just automated miners, we can probably reprogram them instead of destroying them." "Or jam their control signals," suggested Dr. Yelenev, releasing more excited spores. "My people have experience with ancient automation systems." The room was buzzing now, not with the careful, controlled energy of neural communication, but with the chaotic excitement of minds working together on a problem. Ideas were flowing freely as different species shared knowledge and expertise. Ambassador Cathera watched in amazement as solutions developed rapidly through natural conversation. In 12 minutes, You have identified the threat and developed 3 different response strategies, she said. This would normally take us days just to organize the proper committees. Because we're not afraid to be wrong, Jake explained. Look, Commander ZYX suggested reprogramming the ships, but Dr. Yelenet had a better idea about jamming signals. In your system, ZYX would have spent hours making sure his idea was perfect before sharing it. But what if someone had taken offense at his imperfect suggestion? Asked a nervous delegate from the Ethereal Collective. Then we would have talked about it and figured out a better way, Lisa replied. Disagreement isn't dangerous. It's just part working together. Commander ZYX was already coordinating with his fleet commanders through rapid voice communication. My ships can be in position to attempt signal jamming within 6 hours, he reported. Dr. Yelenev, can your people provide the technical specifications? Already working on it, she replied, her translator converting her chemical signals into words. I have 3 botanist engineers who specialize in ancient technology. Chancellor Vextor watched the coordinated response taking shape with obvious amazement. This level of coordination typically requires weeks of planning. Sometimes the best plans are the ones you make while you're doing them. Jake said, Now, who has ships that can evacuate civilians while Commander ZYX's people work on stopping the automated miners? Within an hour, they had a complete response plan involving ships from 7 different species. The automated attackers were stopped within 6 hours, faster than any military response in Council history. As reports of success came in from all 3 systems, the chamber filled with an entirely new sound. Aliens talking naturally to each other, sharing excitement and relief without electronic filters. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council was actually talking. Over the following days, something remarkable happened in the Council chambers. Word of the successful emergency response had spread throughout Nexus Station, and aliens began approaching Jake and Lisa with curiosity instead of fear. Commander ZYX was the first to officially request what he called natural communication training. He arrived at the human quarters, wearing no neural dampening equipment at all. Captain Morrison, he said, his voice rough from disuse but growing stronger. My tactical abilities improved dramatically when I stopped filtering my thoughts. I want to learn more about this direct communication method. Jake smiled. There's not much to learn, Commander. You just say what you're thinking. But how do you prevent giving offense? How do you avoid emotional contamination? Lisa laughed, a sound that made ZYX step back slightly, though he looked more curious and afraid now. Commander, emotions aren't contamination. They're information. When Jake gets excited about an idea, that tells me it's worth paying attention to. When I sound worried, he knows to look more carefully at potential problems. Your emotions help you make better decisions? ZYX asked, clearly struggling with the concept. Of course they do, Jake replied. Fear tells us when something might be dangerous. Excitement helps us recognize good opportunities. Anger shows us when something isn't working the way it should. Dr. Yelenev arrived during their conversation, bringing with her a cloud of pleasant floral scents. I hope you don't mind the interruption, she said. I wanted to thank you for helping me understand that my pheromone communications are not primitive, as I had always been taught. Primitive? Lisa asked, your chemical signals carry incredibly complex information. During the emergency response, you were sharing detailed technical data through scent alone. That's amazing. The plant-like scientist rustled her leaves with what Jake was learning to recognize as happiness. The Council has always insisted that we suppress our natural communication methods in favor of neural links. But yesterday, I could share information much faster using my own chemical systems. More aliens began arriving. A representative from the crystalline hive mind of Altair approached cautiously. We observed your emergency session with great interest. The crystal being said, its voice like wind chimes instead of coming through electronic translation. Our collective consciousness found the rapid exchange of individual ideas stimulating. Individual ideas? Jake asked. Yes. In our hive mind, all thoughts are shared equally. But watching your species work together while maintaining individual perspectives showed us possibilities we had never considered. Perhaps perfect unity is not always the most effective approach. Ambassador Kethera joined the growing group. I have been researching our historical archives, she announced. Dr. Brown, you asked yesterday about innovation and creative problem-solving in our current system. The results were disturbing. She activated a holographic display, showing statistical charts. In the 3,000 years since we implemented universal neural dampening, the rate of technological advancement in council space has decreased by 92%. Scientific discoveries are down 87%. Successful diplomatic solutions to conflicts have decreased by 74%. The assembled aliens studied the data with growing amazement. But we have maintained peace, protested a delegate from the ethereal collective who had just arrived. Have we? Kethera challenged. Or have we simply become too slow to react to problems before they become crises? Look at yesterday's emergency. Under our old system, those mining colonies would have been completely destroyed before we finished forming our analysis committees. Commander ZYX nodded grimly. I've been reviewing our military response times. We've been fortunate that no serious threats have emerged in recent centuries, because our current communication protocols would make effective defense nearly impossible. Jake looked around at the group of aliens who were questioning thousands of years of tradition. You know, you don't have to choose between our way and your way. Maybe there's a combination that works better. What do you mean? Dr. Yelena asked, her sense shifting to curious purple. Well, your neural communication systems are incredible for sharing complex technical data, Lisa explained. And some situations probably do require careful, filtered thinking. But for brainstorming, emergency response, creative problem solving, natural communication seems to work better. A hybrid approach, mused a crystalline representative. Fascinating. Ambassador Kethera was nodding slowly. Different communication methods for different purposes. Formal neural protocols for official record-keeping and complex data transfer. Natural communication for creative collaboration and rapid decision-making. But what about the danger of offense? The risk of emotional contamination? Asked the ethereal delegate nervously. Commander ZYX surprised everyone by laughing, a harsh, barking sound that made several aliens jump. Yesterday, Dr. Yelena told me my tactical suggestions were crude and lacking elegance. In the old system, I would have spent days filing formal complaints. Instead, I asked her what she meant, and she helped me improve my ideas. You weren't offended? The ethereal being asked in amazement. I was, for about 30 seconds. Then I realized she was trying to help me, not insult me. The key is learning to tell the difference. Dr. Yelena released a burst of apologetic yellow scent. I hope I did not cause lasting distress with my directness. You helped me develop a better strategy that saved lives, ZYX replied. I think I can handle a little hurt pride in exchange for that. Jake was amazed at how quickly these species were adapting. You're all natural at this. I think the ability to communicate directly was never really lost. It was just suppressed. Perhaps, said Ambassador Kethera thoughtfully, but implementing changes will not be easy. Many council members are terrified of natural communication. They have lived their entire lives with neural filters. Then we make it optional, Lisa suggested. Create special chambers or sessions where natural communication is allowed, but maintain the traditional systems for those who need them. Free speech zones, Jake added. Areas where anyone can request rapid, natural communication for specific purposes. The crystalline representative chimed musically. Our collective finds this concept intriguing. We would volunteer to participate in experimental sessions. As with the Draconian fleet, Commander ZYX added firmly. And a botanical consciousness, confirmed Dr. Yelena through a cloud of enthusiastic green spores. Ambassador Kethera smiled, an expression Jake had never seen from any council member before. I believe I will be presenting a very unusual proposal to the council tomorrow. The question is whether we can convince enough members to try something new. Don't convince them, Jake suggested. Show them. Let them see what we can accomplish when we actually talk to each other instead of just exchanging filtered data. As the impromptu gathering broke up, Jake realized that something fundamental had changed. The aliens weren't just learning to communicate naturally. They were remembering what their species had been capable of before fear made them choose safety over growth. The galaxy was about to rediscover its voice. 6 months later, the Galactic Council chambers looked completely different. The massive crystal dome had been redesigned with 2 distinct sections. The traditional silent corridor maintained the old neural communication systems, while the new open forum buzzed with the sounds of dozens of species talking, arguing, and collaborating in their natural voices. Jake stood at the podium in the open forum, wearing the new insignia of the Communication Facilitation Corps, a simple badge showing sound waves intersecting with traditional neural patterns. Around him, the most diverse group of aliens ever assembled worked together on the biggest crisis the galaxy had faced in centuries. "Okay, everyone, let's review what we know," Jake announced to the crowd. His voice carried clearly through translation systems that had been adapted to handle natural speech instead of just filtered data. Commander ZYX stepped forward, no longer the nervous, controlled officer he had been months ago. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from outside the galaxy. Estimated arrival time is 43 days. Ship count is over 10,000 vessels. A worried murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Dr. Yelenev released a cloud of concerned orange spores that her translator converted to words. "The ship designs don't match any known civilization in our databases," she reported. "But the energy signatures suggest they're from the Andromeda Galaxy." "An invasion force?" asked Ambassador Kithera, who now served as the first director of hybrid communication protocols. "That's what we need to figure out," Lisa replied from her position at a holographic display. The traditional council approach would be to spend months analyzing the data and forming response committees. But we don't have months. The crystalline representative chimed in with its wind chime voice. "Our collective consciousness has been running continuous calculations since the detection. The approaching fleet's trajectory suggests they are not merely passing through our galaxy." Jake nodded. "Right. So we need to decide. Do we prepare for war, attempt first contact, or find another option entirely? In the old system, such a question would have required formal proposals, committee reviews, and weeks of careful analysis. In the new hybrid system, ideas began flowing immediately. Military preparation is essential regardless of their intentions. Commander ZYX stated firmly, but we shouldn't assume hostile intent without evidence. "Agreed," said a delegate from the Ethereal Collective who had overcome her fear of natural communication. "However, we must consider that they may not understand our peaceful intentions." Dr. Yelenev released a burst of thoughtful purple scent. "What if we approach this scientifically? Send a small first contact team to meet them at the galaxy's edge, while simultaneously preparing defensive positions." "That's incredibly risky," pointed out a representative from the Aquatic Federation. "If they are hostile, we'll be giving away our positions and capabilities. But if they're not hostile, a military response might provoke the very conflict we're trying to avoid," countered the crystalline being. Jake watched the debate with satisfaction. 6 months ago, these species would never have been able to discuss such complex, emotionally charged topics without their neural filters. Now they were openly disagreeing, building on each other's ideas, and finding solutions to control chaos. "What about a compromise approach?" suggested a new voice. Ambassador Torvan of the Silicon-based miners had only recently joined the open forum sessions. "Send a diplomatic ship with a small escort. Show we're prepared to defend ourselves, but leading with peaceful intentions." "Who would volunteer for such a dangerous mission?" asked Commander ZYX. Without hesitation, Jake raised his hand. The Communication Facilitation Corps was created for exactly this kind of situation. If these aliens don't understand our communication methods, we're the best chance for making contact. Lisa nodded agreement. Humans have experience with first contact situations, and if they communicate naturally like we do, the neural translation systems might not work properly anyway. Ambassador Kithera looked concerned. "Captain Morrison, you realize that if this goes wrong, you'll be responsible for potentially starting an intergalactic war?" "And if we don't try," Jake replied, "we might start one anyway by letting fear make our decisions for us." The debate continued for hours, but the solution emerged much faster than anyone had thought possible. A joint task force would be formed, combining the best diplomatic, scientific, and military minds from across the Council. They would approach the incoming fleet with a message of peaceful first contact, backed by sufficient force to defend themselves if necessary. Most importantly, the first contact team would use both traditional neural communication systems and natural speech, giving them the flexibility to adapt to whatever communication methods the aliens preferred. As the session ended and delegates began filing out to implement their decisions, Ambassador Cathera approached Jake. "I never thought I would say this," she admitted, "but I think the galaxy owes humanity a debt of gratitude. We have forgotten how to truly work together." Jake looked around the bustling open forum, where aliens from dozens of species continued their conversations in small groups. "We just helped you remember something you already knew. The ability was always there." Dr. Yeleneth joined them, her scent patterns showing a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I have volunteered for First Contact Team," she announced. "My chemical communication abilities might be useful if the aliens have similar sensory capabilities. And I'll be commanding the escort ships," Commander Zwax added as he approached, "though I hope we won't need them." Lisa was packing up her data tablets nearby. "The interesting thing is, we've made more progress on this crisis in one day than the old council system could have managed in months. But we've also been more careful and thorough than we could have been with just human-style communication. The hybrid approach works," Jake agreed. "Different tools for different problems." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Jake took one last look at the new council setup. In the silent quarter, some aliens still worked with their traditional neural systems, handling complex data analysis and formal record-keeping with their characteristic precision. In the open forum, others engaged in rapid brainstorming and creative problem-solving through natural communication. But the most interesting activity was happening in the spaces between the two areas, where aliens moved freely from one communication mode to another as their tasks required. They had learned to choose their communication methods based on what worked best, rather than what they had always done. The approaching alien fleet would be the ultimate test of this new approach. In 43 days, they would learn whether the galaxy's rediscovered ability to truly talk to each other would be enough to prevent a war. But for the first time in 3,000 years, Jake was confident that the Galactic Council was ready for whatever came next. They had remembered how to speak with one voice while still honoring the unique perspectives of every member species. The galaxy had found its voice again, and it was stronger than ever. As Jake and Lisa walked back toward their quarters, the corridors of Nexus Station echoed with the sound of 1,000 different species talking, laughing, arguing, and planning together. It was chaotic, emotional, and sometimes overwhelming. It was also beautiful. You know what the best part is? Lisa said as they reached their door. "What's that?" "We're not the only species allowed to speak freely anymore. We're just the ones who helped everyone else remember how." Jake smiled. "Even better. We're not special because we're the only ones who can talk naturally. We're special because we help build something bigger than any one species could create alone." In the distance, the approaching alien fleet continued its journey toward the galaxy, unaware that they were about to encounter something unprecedented, a galactic civilization that had learned to combine the wisdom of careful thought with the power of free expression. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place.